Good afternoon. Welcome everyone out there joining us for our third discussion in a series of 6 on diversity, equity, and inclusion with the Poulsbo Rotary Club. My name's Jamie Hollis. My pronouns are she and her. I'm excited tonight to be facilitating this discussion with you and our Rotarian Brian Martinez and our special guest, Dr. DI Todd. Want to let everybody know also that are joining us out there to please submit your questions. We'll be screening those during the conversation and bringing them forward during our discussion. So don't hesitate to drop them in the chat box if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook Live. So first I'd like to introduce our Rotarian, Brian Martinez. She's going to be leading the discussion this evening. Brian currently serves as the Assistant Rotary Governor of Area 9 of District 5020, supporting Rotary clubs on the Kitsap Peninsula. She's a former Rotary president and ongoing member of the Kingston North Kitsap Club. She actively works with local clubs to embrace cultural differences and foster collaborative relationships with people of diverse backgrounds to grow and develop club memberships. Professionally, Brian has recently become a small business owner, soon to open a Nothing Bundt Cakes franchise in Silverdale, Washington. As a physical therapist for the past 18 years, she has specialized in outpatient orthopedics, gaining valuable leadership, marketing, and management experience, being a partner with Kitsap Physical Therapy and Sports Clinic for over 10 years. Working and living in our community has provided Brian the opportunity to build very strong community connections and actively support numerous community efforts. As a parent of 2 elementary school children, Brian has vested interest in the area communities and schools. She currently serves as a school board director for the North Kitsap School District. Brian has a master's degree in physical therapy from Loma Linda University, and she lives in Kingston, Washington with her husband and 2 boys. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
I also want to introduce our guest speaker this evening. We're very excited to have with us Dr. Todd Jenkins. Dr. Todd currently serves as the Senior Diversity, Inclusion, and Innovation Leader in Corporate America at a Fortune 400 company and as a Global Inclusion Trainer, Strategist, and Speaker with Bowtie Leadership, INC. As a consultant, he has worked with several companies such as Walmart, Google, Facebook, American Airlines, and Deloitte, just to name a few. He's also worked with the oil and gas companies, small and large nonprofits, and entrepreneurs. He graduated with honors from the University of South Carolina with 2 degrees, a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Sociology. He's obtained a Master's of Science from Illinois State University and a doctorate from University of Arkansas. His research area focused on minority professionals, retention, and perception of their supervisor within the workplace. He currently is enrolled at Harvard University, completing postdoctorate studies as a Harvard Fellow. Also, Dr. Jenkins serves as a faculty member for the Executive Institute on Inclusion and on the Diversity Business Journal Review Board. Dr. Jenkins is also a proud Rotarian and a Paul Harris Fellow from the Rotary Club of Fayetteville, Arkansas. He has served as the former Rotaract advisor, Interact sponsor, RYLC presenter, Youth Services Chair, 2 terms on the club board of directors, and graduated from his district and zone leadership academy. Dr. Jenkins is currently one of the youngest youth exchange district chairs in Rotary International. He has had the honor to speak at various Rotary districts, zones, and international conventions. Jenkins serves on multiple boards locally and internationally in education, business, and inclusion initiatives. He has recently been selected and appointed to serve on the first Rotary International Committee DEI Task Force to align Rotary's diversity, equity, and inclusion assessment strategy goals and initiatives. So today he's known as Dr. Bowtie Todd, who's given inspirational talks and education to audience of all sizes and backgrounds throughout North America, Asia, South America, and Europe. Dr. Todd Jenkins is a proud husband, author, servant leader, and conversationalist who believes in his philosophy, bow tie, it all together, serve and simply be a gift into the world. I'll also just mention we're very excited to have Dr. Todd with us. He spends part of his time in our part of the world working out of Seattle, Washington. So, with that, I'm going to turn the conversation over to Brian and look forward to all of the tips that Dr. Todd will give us about recruiting and how to be inclusive in our organization.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And thank you, Dr. Todd. I'm really, really looking forward to our conversation today. And I just want to take a moment to welcome all the Rotarians and guests who are joining us live today. Today, we're going to be talking about recruiting in Rotary. And, a top priority of Rotary is growing and diversifying our membership. In 1905, the founder, Paul Harris, he laid down the foundation for the mission and values that today are so relevant, and especially with our commitment to becoming more diverse, inclusive, and representative of the neighborhoods and communities that we serve. So during his leadership, Paul Harris wrote a book. It was called This Rotarian Age. And I just want to share just a couple summarized quotes from his book. And it goes like this. Obviously, the only possible means of holding together this little group of Rotarians of 1905, consisting as it did of men of variant racial origins and religious faiths, was through the exercise of tolerance. Rotary brings men differing in social status, religious beliefs, and nationality together in order that they may be more intelligible to each other and therefore become more sympathetic and friendly. Who would be interested in a garden containing flowers of one species or one color only? Variety has been truly said to be the spice of life. So sameness is monotonous and depressing, end of quote. From the beginning, Rotary's meetings stood out. People were called by their first names and not by their titles. And this was done intentionally, and it was done to really pave pathways for true friendships to form and to avoid separating people into various distinctions. And it is said that for Paul Harris, diversity was never a problem to overcome, rather kind of just this sort of area of delight for him. And as we continue to make diversity and inclusion a priority, Paul Harris's vision for Rotary is spot on for today as we continue to grow and serve our communities. So with that, our goals for today really are to learn about how we can better understand our community's demographics and assess our club preparedness, to learn ways to really recruit for diversity, and finally, to better understand how to really nurture that culture of inclusivity for long-term success. So I'm so excited to have Dr. Todd Jenkins with us. And before we really dive in, Dr. Todd, for our audience and for those who might not be familiar with the story behind the bow tie, it would be really great if you could share with us your bow tie story, because I really think that it provides great framework for our conversation today.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me tonight, and good evening, good afternoon, or good morning for who's ever tuning in tonight. I am extremely honored to be invited to be a part of the series tonight and have this conversation. And so what better way to start off tonight with this explaining the bow tie framework, because it really helps us with conversations. And the bow tie for me, is larger than a necktie, and I love my bow ties. But I started to notice when I travel locally and globally, individuals will stop me and ask me about my bow tie and my necktie. Did I tie it myself? Where did I get it from? And people are just curious. And I mean, most of the times I always have heard positive comments. And if I heard a negative comment, it was never about me. It was about, their partner saying, oh, he doesn't wear it or she doesn't wear it because their neck is so, I don't know. It's so interesting. So I never heard any negative comments, but I had this epiphany and I started to think, what if we lived in a world where people would genuinely stop what they're doing to approach another stranger and be curious about them, what, and have, give positive comments, right? And be really curious to ask questions. So what I discover, and I see this in research and in practice, is people are really challenged with engaging with, especially with people with different views or diverse backgrounds that they may not be able to relate to. And so what I did was I created a very, very simple acronym around the bow tie, and I share it with you all tonight. Let's start with the first letter of bow tie, the letter B. And this stands for, in anything you do, especially in conversations, and especially tonight, I need you to be mentally present. Okay. So many times we come into conversations and we could be thinking about everything else except for focusing on trying to listen and engage and be mentally present in the conversation. The next letter of bow tie is the letter O. O stands for openness. I want you to be open to new ideas. So it's going to be things that we discuss tonight. I'm not asking that you will agree with everything. I'm not asking that you will go and implement everything, but I am asking that you come in with an open mind and an open heart. The next letter of bow tie is the letter W. And W stands for willing to share your own perspective and own your own truth. I believe that everyone who's listening tonight has a unique perspective and a story, and it's up to you to share it. And we all have our truth, and it's up for us to examine and ensure that we're aligned with the truth. And last but not least, usually individuals tell me the most challenging part of this necktie is like getting this knot in the middle. And yeah, I self-tie all these things, and some people say it's really challenging. And I've actually seen, my friends, this is the most challenging parts of conversations, which is the TIE. How do you tie it together? How do you really, really bring it all together? And tonight, my friends, I hope that we can have a bow tie conversation. Can we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes. Well, this is awesome. So I'm excited to be here, and that's why today I'm known as Dr. Bowtie, because daily my mission is to create spaces for all humans to belong and thrive together, one bow tie combo at a time.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing that, because it really, I know when I first heard that, it really resonated with me and it impacted me. And I think, like you said, it's something that we can take. And if we just think about that in all our conversations and the things that we do in our interactions, it can make a difference. So I want to start off by just kind of kick it off and ask you, why is it so important for, diversity and inclusion, that we focus on this for the long-term success of Rotary? If you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, when we talk about the concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion, for any organization, especially a service organization, right? It's a moral case. It's the right thing to do. It's a social case. The world is changing, and we want to be reflective of our community because it has shown that we can ensure that we meet the needs of our community when we are truly reflective, as well as it's an imperative for business. If you really want your organization to live and not die, inclusivity and diversity is where it's at. It's been proven over and over in research about how the output is so much greater when it's diverse. You're able to get into and achieve new heights, go to new markets, go to places you never been before. But diversity is only as good as the inclusive climate and culture that it has within the organization. So I think it is critical, it's imperative for Rotary as an organization to be a thought leader and a thought partner in this space of this journey of maturity.
Great. And just as you're kind of talking about that, when clubs are, as we know, it's a big priority that to grow our membership and to really diversify our membership. And, we talk about maybe the importance of clubs really looking at how prepared they are for that and really assessing before they go out to recruit, really taking a strong look at how they're operating. And it would just be great to hear your input and your thoughts on that and why that might be so important, for clubs to really dive into that first before they really make recruiting, a focus.
Yeah, when we talk about building diversity into landscapes, into organizations, it's just not a standalone initiative. Recruitment is you just can't recruit and just expect for everything else to fall in place. No, you have to look at the entire inclusive ecosystem. And you have to examine the entire experience of a member, right? From the time they recruit to the time they on board as orientate into the club. What is their experience in the club and their engagement? Also, when they leave the club, what is their experience in the community or their workplace, etc.? And we have to really, really examine that. And the way we look in the framework that we examine, we look at the P's, we look at the policies, we look at the programs that we have, we look at the power dynamics, as well as we look at the people existing already in our clubs. So we really want to make sure that from an operation standpoint that we're examining all those P's before we go out and start recruitment. Because if we don't have a culture that's already engaging or is prepared to receive different individuals and mindsets and ideas unlike their own, it's not going to do you any good of attracting and recruiting someone that's going to leave the next day after their experience not feeling connected or if they belong in the club culture.
Yes. Oh, agreed. That's great. That is great information. And, when we're, again, talking about recruiting and bringing people into the club and that retention, I think for some, as we know, diversity is very broad. It is not, we're not just talking race and gender. And, I was wondering if you could kind of touch on possibly some examples or scenarios where a club might unintentionally be exclusive. That is definitely not their intent. However, that may be a reason why they're not attracting that more diversified membership. And that may be, if you touch on accessibility,
Yeah.
I think sometimes our annual dues could be a barrier. So if you could just kind of share your thoughts on that, that would be great.
Yeah, see, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? Until you continue to allow space to unpack some of these climate issues that we're having within our own backyard that's have also navigated into our own structure of our club. We don't spend a great deal of asking or having welcoming thoughts of why and why not. Why do we have this policy? Why not try this opportunity? Who are we missing at the table? Visually and invisible, right? And so when you think about accessibility, think about our members with disabilities or individuals that's coming to the club with disabilities. Do they have access? So many people think about, okay, let me think about this, the wheelchair accessibility model, making sure they can pull up, have this and this. It's beyond, and that is important, but it's more than that, right? Mm-hmm. Think about just like we're online today. Everyone is doing Zoom, but you may have someone that's visually impaired. And so you can do things such as self descriptions, right? You can describe yourself. Hey, I'm a brown guy and with a orange and blue bow tie in the room of my library. Like, you could describe yourself. These are things that you can see to be accessible, but see, you may not think of that, right? So you just excluded an entire group that's trying to tune in, but they may not be able to see you. Also, you think even beyond that, you think about just the opportunities, from accessibility or access. Let's think about access, to your point, financial. Sometimes that's usually the most common challenge why people don't join organizations, is because of the dual structure and the financial opportunities that they don't have. And so we really want to think about how we're meeting the individuals where they're at and removing the structural barriers so everyone can have an opportunity to be a member. And so you got to ensure that you're creating the spaces. I tell people this should be a topic on every board's agenda. It should not wait until something happened and then we're trying to respond. This is a journey that we're all on, and we have to take and create the time to be intentional, or if we're not intentionally being exclusive, we are unintentionally being exclusive.
I really appreciate you saying, and all of that, and really encouraging us to put it on our agenda, even if we may think that it doesn't apply to us or to our club, because like you said, I think there's always room for growth. And if we wait until we're kind of responding to something, or it's versus being more proactive and creating, that space and thinking about, hey, let's take a look at our community and who we want, to bring in that truly will allow our club to mirror and reflect who we serve.
And it's urgent. We are in time. We have no more time to wait. So this is supposed to be happening in conversations yesterday, right? We are in a place of urgency action. Our clubs and our communities need us, right? We are a beacon of hope to our motto is service above self, right? And so we should be doing a lot of selfless acts daily to be among our community to ensure that everyone has access to opportunity. And we do great things. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
As an organization, we do wonderful things, but we can do better. And we can also have an opportunity to be stronger in our impact when we get the role for diversity in our membership and inclusivity in our culture, but most importantly, equity in our design as an organization.
That's great. Now, again, I'd love to pick your brain and get your insight, and let's just kind of throw out a possible scenario at a club level. So now the club is having this discussion and they're kind of divided. So, you have some of the members who are really just good with status quo and they're saying the way we do things, this is fine. And then you have some members who maybe really feel that, their membership is not a true mirror of the community and the people that they represent and serve. So I'd love to get your input about addressing this situation, suggestions, ideas of, how do we have and work through these conversations, and so that we come out on the other end, stronger, and that there isn't unintended consequences from those conversations.
Yeah, I see that quite often. This is when you get on the conversation of diversity, is a difficult topic because of how individuals show up to the word very differently based on their lived experience, right? I often tell my team, this is a muscle, especially in an organization and a workplace, that is just not strong. It's not strong. And so many times we come into the conversation with potentially a shame and blame. So many times we come into conversation or with our defense up, or sometimes we're coming to conversation, we're exhausted because it's the same conversation over and over and over and over. And you know what? So what I started to think about is, like, as an inclusive leader, I am open to hear everyone's perspective. I may not agree, but I've learned that skill to be open to hear everyone's perspective. But this is what really set us on the compass. I start back at the mission, the mission of what brings us all here together. And when you think of Rotary, our mission is to provide service to others. We're going to promote integrity. We're going to advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through fellowship of business professionals and community leaders. So that's our mission. So that's why we're here. And so we want to think about, when people want to argue while we're talking, let's go back to the mission, right? And how this is imperative for our mission. And if you're not aligned with the mission, maybe this may not be the right organization for you. I mean, I think that's very simple to me, because people forget that the organization didn't join you.
Right.
You joined the organization.
Right.
We are members. And I think it's great and it's beautiful for you to be your authentic self, but we want to make sure that we're aligned with the mission and the values of the organizations, because in these difficult conversations, my friends, your mission and your values of the organization will set you free. And it doesn't, you don't have to debate that. It's not debatable. And so I really tell people, let's start with the mission and the values, but also when you come to these conversations, some advice is really be sure that you have clear objectives and articulate that on the front end of the conversation. Sometimes we just come in and say, let's talk about it. And we don't really know where we're going, what we're trying to solve. Some people think you're coming to talk about it, about them. And so they're already on the platform of defense. So I really said it's a lot of different ways and strategies that you can look. It depends on the situation, the culture, and the climate. But I say always think about time, place, and manner to help you navigate these difficult topics and allow your mission and values to set you free.
Oh, that is great advice. And I think, like you said, typically when we come to Rotary, it's because our mission, we align with the mission and values as a person. And so, like you said, if we keep going back to that, I really like that as just remembering in those conversations, and especially those uncomfortable conversations or challenging conversations, you can kind of, if we come back to that, we can start kind of get going in the right direction again, and hopefully prevent us from kind of going down these rabbit holes that, again, unfortunately, like you said, there's unintended consequences.
But and we have to continue to also give ourselves grace and space, as well as others, because we are all coming into this work very differently. Mm-hmm. And we're all on various levels of engagement, of our journey of maturity. I do this work every day and I still learn. But see, that's the difference, is that I have a willingness to learn. Mm-hmm. I have a thought process that I don't know everything about this, and I don't know everything about everyone's experience, but I'm willing to sit back and learn. I'm willing to engage and ask questions. I'm willing to do my research and not allow the community that's marginalized to always have to teach me, right? So these are the partnerships and engagement that we need with self. Yeah. Before we even engage with the organization. And so many times we think about the organization commitment that we forget about what are we doing personally, and what are we also doing collectively as a whole. So that's just something else I want people to really think about, is that understand that everyone comes into it very differently, and we're all on a journey here.
Yes. And speaking kind of science, and I know you do a lot of research, and you, is there anything you can share with us, kind of just that you know of, maybe in the work that you've done, some kind of proven strategies for recruiting for diversity, or recommendations for clubs, like when they've gone back, kind of done the work to kind of assess where they're at, how prepared are they ready, and now they're looking to really go out there and kind of set up their strategy. And I think you do have, I know you have some great input and thoughts on this.
We'll see. I would say, what I like to tell, especially to my friends of Rotarians, and anybody. I know we're talking about Rotary tonight, but this can go to any organization, because this is not just an issue or a challenge within Rotary, right? It's a challenge for a lot of organizations. I would tell you, it's very simple to me. Before you seek to recruit, I need you to seek to relate. And what do you mean by that, Dr. Jenkins? What I mean is that let's not try to go out and recruit all these people that you have no clue who they are. They don't know who you are. You don't know who they are. And you're just doing it because you are trying to up a quota or your representation or your demographics, but you don't have the empathy level. You're not building that relationship. And so my first approach and recommendation to anyone that's trying to recruit diversity in their organization is go out there and relate. Try to go and build partnerships. Go serve alongside of diverse communities. Also, commit and support diverse communities, right? Nobody wants to go and join anything that doesn't support them, right? And so I say, let's wait. And you got to be very careful about support too, because sometimes we see dominant groups come in to try to support diverse groups as the savior and trying to change and but not wanting to do the real work to really get to know them and know their stories. And so I say my first recommendation is I want you to seek to relate before you recruit. The next thing I would say is understand that you don't have to do this alone. It is partners in your local communities that are willing to engage if they really see that you're doing it for the right reason, right? And it's also mission aligned. So I would say partner with diverse organizations. Also go get to know them as well, as engage with their organizations, and not just show up because I'm just coming to recruit, but show up because I'm genuinely wanting us to see how we can better our communities together. And some other strategies is that, and this is for anybody in the organization. You got to think about what is the experience of the candidate. This is something we talk about in the workplace, right? What is the candidate experience? So think about, okay, it's just some small things. If you're going to go and ask someone to come to a club meeting, one of the biggest practices in Rotary that we do when we recruit new members is bring them to a lunch meeting and let them meet the club. And it could be, I'm in a club of 150 plus. I mean, that could be overwhelming, right? But what is their experience? What is our follow up and follow through? Think about the strategy of how you're going to introduce them to Rotary. Is it through a service project? Is it through a program? And most importantly, and last but not least, I would say, so you got to think about all of the experience. Another thing that we fail to do is that we forget to ask the new member, what are their goals in life, professionally or personally? Because here's the gold. If we can connect to their goals and make it aligned to our mission and what we do in our club, that member will not only just be engaged, but they will be retained because they have now had a personal mission and commitment of support alignment that can potentially fulfill their quest. And I will encourage organizations to start thinking about that. How are we asking anybody who's interested in our organization, what can we do for you? Sometimes they don't know. It's a new, Rotary used to be very secretive, and you just a little secret society. I may not know what Rotary can do for me, but what I can tell you is, hey, I'm working on this project. I have a passion about this, and I guarantee you a good Rotarian know how to get them connected because you can find everything of goodness in Rotary. So those are my advice about recruitment strategies.
No, that is great. And I know you, that's just awesome. You talked about, when we spoke last, I think you mentioned too, which I thought was great, just kind of another strategy perhaps is kind of that cohort.
Oh, yeah.
Which I really loved. I mean, everything you've shared thus far, these are just all great nuggets I think we're going to all take away. But if you could kind of touch on the cohort experience, perhaps, that recruitment strategy, because I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, we have seen this in research and we see this for anything with the recruitment. No one wants to come in and be alone, right? Everyone want to have a sense of connection. Sometimes we look at that sponsor or the person who bringing you to the meeting as that sense of connection, but you're the only point, right? They have all these other people or that they don't know. So what we have seen as a good practice is that if you can bring individuals in it's called cluster recruiting, but it's kind of the cohort model. If you can bring in individuals, at least 3 at a time, to come in as a cohort, any new members, right? They have a sense of bond, a sense of connection, a sense of newness of an experience that they're going to go through together. So it's not already this hierarchical level of, oh, I got to navigate, because what we see in these organizations is that one person may spend a whole 6 months or a year trying to figure out the who's and what's. That's a whole year loss of engagement. And some don't want to stay that long to figure it out. So they end up leaving. And so I think that's another great connection strategy that you can do. And I would tell you, especially specifically talking about diversity, nobody wants to be a token recruit. Okay, I'm just gonna let everyone know that out loud. Okay, I understand, and I know we're on Facebook Live, and I don't know who else is going to see this, but if you know me well, I'm very transparent, and I like to speak truth. And I'm going to speak truth to this: is that we have to get away from having this token recruit, and then we allow ourselves to be credit for that token recruit. So when we talk about diversity, we say, let's just use the guy with the bow tie. I'm the token recruit. I'm the only person with the bow tie on. Now we like to go out. Oh no, we have diversity. I got the guy with the bow tie. Oh no, the guy with the bow tie, he's now on the board. Oh, the guy with the bow. We got to get away with that credit. Like, we don't want people to be the first one always. So I just want to help somebody out thinking about that. And this is very important that, yes, that may be the first one in your group, but you want to commit to not allowing that individual difference to be the last time. And you want to be able to cultivate that environment so they're not, and they don't appear to be, or they're not perceived as that token recruit.
Oh, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's a good reminder, because it is, I think, easy. Or we, like you said, we're kind of conditioned to check the box, or as we may put out there, it's a goal for our club to grow our membership. And so it does kind of become a, hey, I brought this person in, and, but again, that's not the focus on, it needs to be that we aren't just checking the boxes.
Exactly. And to add, we're not a monolithic group. Everyone has different experiences. Just because Todd with the bow tie said, this is how I feel and like to be treated, that does not mean the next person with the bow tie is going to feel the same type of way or will like the same type of treatment or even identify the same way. So we got to really spend a little more time being intentional and really being present in the moment to engage with individuals and meet them where they're at. Because that's another thing that I see quite often is a missed opportunity, if you will, where one individual may hear the story of one diverse individual and take it as cascaded across all individuals that look like that individual. And we want to be very mindful of that. Everyone has unique experiences and they're all different. And it's also depends on which part of the world and region you live in, even in the US. A lot of cultural differences.
Yes. And kind of going along that line, we talked about maybe how clubs could be, unintentionally exclusive, looking the other, do you have anything to share, thoughts on examples or scenarios of inclusive behaviors, and what that might really look like at a club level? And my guess is that there's so many clubs that are doing this, this behavior all the time, but maybe not recognizing, that these little things really make a difference.
I always think language is so powerful in this space, right? So many times that we exclude individuals just by our language, right? So tonight, we were able to identify with our pronouns. This is something I can see some clubs are challenged to embrace this practice. And some say, well, why? I don't think this matters to anyone in my club, but you never know who it matters to on the club. And so it's this having some inclusive language around gender identity, pronouns. And this is a word we're still learning because we didn't have all the research that we have today to give power and understand some of these meanings and nuances and terminology. Also thinking about, even how we place groups at our tables, right? We have that one table that certain individuals sit at. We separate young and old. We call it out young and old. Here's the young person, and here's the person who get the young person award. And these are things that we're not mindful of that can easily have someone excluded from a conversation or even feeling as if they belong. Some other things that's when you talk about inclusive behavior is really, thinking about the environment where everyone feels safe to speak up. Yes. Sometimes we have this power dynamic is that if you've been a Rotarian this long based on tenure or, here we go, you're a past triple president. And so therefore you always have the floor or you are the DG in the room. So therefore we yield the floor to you. And I understand that it's a respect factor, but do we have an environment, as a leader, as a member, do I create the environment for individuals to feel as if they can speak up? That's the inclusive behavior, like showing appreciation for people who speak up, right? Interrupting the interrupter. You could do that. You could do that when you have some leader, when you have some power, right? That's inclusive behavior. Inclusive behavior has been an ally for groups that are marginalized, being an action and speaking up for them when they're not at the table or in the room. That's inclusive behavior. Listening to diverse opinions and perspectives. That is inclusive behavior. Also, modeling the behavior you wish to see. I mean, it's very, very simple at times, but we got to really think about that people are really watching us. Our neighbors, our kids, our grandkids, our spouses, and we're all looking at each other, and we really got to understand that your behavior and your example is so powerful. And so those are some of the things that's high level that you can think about. Are you being an inclusive leader? And honestly, if you said I don't think about it, I guarantee you that is where the opportunity seeps in for you to do better. Because if you're not because it's stuff we're learning every day with literature, right? It's stuff that I'm not aware of, and I have to think about it. I have to engage with it, and I have to practice daily And that's sometimes can be uncomfortable because, with this work, you got to stay in the gym. You got to stay working out. And if you get out of the gym, you're going to plateau and you're going to forget about it. Start accepting the status quo. And we don't have time for individuals to stay out of the gym in this work. We need each other.
And I was just thinking when you were talking, it was really coming back, like you talked about the muscle, and that we really have to keep using this muscle, and it can be uncomfortable and it may be out of, our norm, but we have to do that. And I think, like you said, that really creates that inclusive behavior, and you don't know what it might mean to the person who's sitting next to you, or the fact that, they've never been asked in the committee meeting, maybe what their input is, and or they've been afraid to speak up just because, like you said, it's, and it's not that they don't have so much to say, but that's, I think also it comes back to that, retention. When people feel engaged and they feel heard, they feel a sense of belonging. And ultimately, that's really, I think what we're all striving for is everybody wants to belong, especially when you're volunteering and you're giving your time, you think, I really want this to be a safe place that I enjoy and I have a sense of belonging there.
Right. And people forget that this is a volunteer, like we're volunteers.
Right. We're all volunteers.
To not feel as if they belong. And the other thing you want to think about from an inclusive model is, you also, unpack our structure, because sometimes we have things that are exclusive when we have like, our Rotary leadership partners, right? It's usually, only a spouse and not partners. Like just the simple things of inclusive language. As we all know, we're having our first gentleman, coming in with Rotary International President nominee Jennifer Jones as our first leader, who so happened to be female, who's really qualified and awesome, and a friend of mine. So we're changing the dynamics, but we want to think about those dynamics in our club, right? What are those structural barriers? I know some clubs, you have to be like a red badge, then you have this badge, then you have that badge, and now you remember, right? And so those are small things, right? Small things. And when someone said, oh, well, we've always done it this way. I actually have a little pen in my office. It says, I say no to, here we go, but we've always done it this way. I will wear my button proud. This is not where we're trying to go anymore. We always say no to that, because if we continue to do what we always done, because they say, well, if it's not broken, you don't need to fix it. Well, you don't know if it was not broken, if that's the only car you ever had.
Right. Yeah.
So just some of the things to think about, my friends. And I love what we do, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I know there's hope. It's hope because we exist today. And there's hope for us to do this better, because Rotarians we're 1.2 million plus around the world. And just imagine if we all collectively work together to get this right, the type of impact that we will have, just like we had on polio.
100%. It looks like we have a question from the audience. If you could maybe discuss DEI and its impact on youth exchange.
Yeah. So of course, youth exchange I know this is live across multiple platforms, and youth exchange is a program that's basically high school students, or a gap year between high school and college, if you will. A certain age group can go abroad for 1 year. We have long-term and we have short-term, where you stay 1 year abroad of your high school year, or maybe like a summer program, as well as we have new generation service exchange, which is like more vocational. So I would tell you the impact of DNI on youth exchange, it's really inclusivity in action, if you will. That is the output and outcome of the DEI opportunity. You are taking someone who's been, who's willing, and they have to be in a vulnerable state to go to a whole nother country in high school years. Oh man, to live abroad for 1 year. If you don't know what else of an opportunity to really expand, your reach and understanding of another culture. And that is really what this whole work is about. It's been able to try to go in places that may be uncomfortable and experiencing new stories, right? St. Augustine says it better. The world is like a book, and those who do not travel only read one page. Well, you don't have to go to another country to read a page. You can read pages through conversations just like tonight. But that's the impact that it has on Youth Exchange. The Youth Exchange allows for individuals to be cultural ambassadors. They represent their countries. They go and they learn a whole nother language based on the country that they're visiting. And it's been incredible. It's been really, really incredible, the program. We usually send out 6,000 individuals a year. So if you're ever interested in Youth Exchange, you're a high school student listening right now, hopefully once the pandemic, and things happen in another year or so, reach out to your local Rotary Club, because we can make it happen if you want to go abroad.
Oh, 100%. Such a great opportunity. Thank you for answering that. I know, Dr. Todd, you're on the task force, correct? The first, Rotary International, they created this DEI Task Force.
Yes.
And, I would love to, for you to kind of share with our audience, kind of the work that, and that you've been doing, as I know this is new or newer. And then also kind of going from that, as we know, change is hard and it can be challenging. And I guess the question is, your thoughts, input on what Rotary leadership, how we can, whether that is at, the president level, the district level, the Rotary International level, but how can we better help our members, understand and engage in this DEI space? So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, first, the task force is an incredible group of individuals that were selected from all around the world. They brought us together to really start this understanding of the foundation of what D&I means for Rotary International. And so definitely our chair, Valerie, Director Valerie, great friend of mine, and the entire group, along with the Rotary staff, it's been a lot of work that we have just started with discovery. And so that's where we're at right now, currently with the discovery phase. And I'm pretty sure coming up with Rotary International Convention in a few weeks, a great update will be actually provided to everyone, hopefully, in those regards. But I would tell you from a leadership standpoint, speaking more there, what can you do? Wow, it's so much you can do. I think first is really taking the advice that we talked about today, is really starting with self-reflection and understand how you show up as a leader. Also understanding that you can, I always encourage, appoint a DEI committee, but here's my big but. It is not only the role of the DEI committee to do all the work, okay? Right. Just because you have a DEI committee, that does not mean the diversity issue is resolved. Like diversity, equity, and inclusion, everyone has a role to play. And it's critical for the leader to play a role just as the member, right? We put a lot of pressures on leaders, but sometimes the leaders don't know. And so sometimes leaders try to fake it till they make it. And that's what's the problem. I'm just being honest. Yeah. And so we have to understand that even also leaders are in different places of this journey. However, as a leader, it is a responsibility to create this hope and vision to allow this space to be fulfilled around equity and inclusion, because it's imperative for our organization, right? And so if you don't have it figured out, of course, get the smart people in the room to help figure it out, because the answers are in your organization. The answers are in your district. The answers are in your club. As a president, you just have to be the leader to create the space, as well as not only create the space for learning, but also create the space for accountability. And you have to really be able to set those things in place. And I really think we have to move even from changing. I don't even think we can be changing this work today. We have to transform. We have to transform ourselves into new heights, because we need to be leaders of this today and tomorrow. The world needs us. I mean, it's really just that simple. We have an incredible opportunity for impact in this space as Rotarians.
Right. No, 100%. And, and I'm listening, and I think when you talk about transform, and sometimes it can be, I mean, it can be overwhelming, or you think, you're thinking just really big picture, right? And so for all of us, I think, having that impact, again, to hear kind of your thoughts on that, just in our communities and in our relationships and how do we really make that transformation happen? And not necessarily always, this like that it has to be this big. It's because, as we know, I think how we really make that change happen, our transformation, is just in our everyday, what we do every day in our interactions. But I would love to hear just your thoughts, for Rotarians and at the club level, as we're all working, trying to work through this. And like you said, we're at different places in our journey and we have different lived experiences. So kind of meeting everybody where they're at.
Yeah, when I think of transformation, I think on the micro level, like it is as large as you would like it to be and is as small as it needs to be. And I think transformation really begins with your heart and mind, personally. But there's another big but, we cannot stop with our hearts and minds. We also need our hands and feet because we need to do the work. Okay. And I think that's why it's uncomfortable, because people may not understand that it takes work for us to kind of and get to root causes and uproot systemic issues that you or I probably didn't create, but we're living in it. So we are on the path of daily, it's ongoing work. And, most people want to understand, once I drink this cup of coffee and once it's done. But that's not how this works. And that's why it takes us all collective, because sometimes you have to, take a break and get back in, or sometimes you have to understand that people are starting at different, engagement factors. So it is holistic work. The other thing, from a tactical standpoint, when I think of individual transformation, outside of internal, external, is really show up. I know that seemed very simple, but show up and be present. Be present in the spaces and the gaps where others are not. And that may be your voice. That may be the way you spend your money. That's how you spend your time. But I would say show up. And then last but not least, is behave. Behave in a way that every day you're striving for inclusivity. And this is when people are watching or when they're not.
Yes, right. It's not just when, I think you, at one of your podcast, talked about kind of on the clock and off the clock. And I really enjoyed that, because I think that's also that, was something, it's all we need, those reminders. And just, again, that it isn't just what we do when people are watching, it's
a lot of the transformations usually happen when you go home. People usually go home and retreat, right? But that's when you be your most vulnerable and comfortable self in the confinements of your own walls of your home, hopefully. And I guess if you can start to brew that quest of curiosity and knowledge and conversation in your own home and your own communities, it just makes things much easier when you go to an organization, right? It's not the first time you heard it. It's not the first time you practice it. And for individuals who turn it on when they go to work, or turn it on when they go to organizations, sometimes they're really challenged, because I've seen in practice is that how you behave when no one is watching will show up when you least expect it, when everybody is watching.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
Just being honest. I've seen it over and over and over.
Well, just this conversation and what you've shared, I think you've really not only sharing, just your experience and your knowledge in this space, but also, I think you've really given us, I feel I've gotten a lot of ideas, suggestions, kind of those nuggets or those action items. And, and it doesn't mean, again, that we're not all in the same place. But like you said, I think we have to start, and continue to do the work, and so if it has to be on everyone's agenda.
Totally agree. And I know we talked about a lot tonight, and, and it could be overwhelming. And like I say, just the people who are listening, this really, the things that stood out to you, reflect on it, write it down, come back and look at it tomorrow, go and talk to someone else about it. Really, really do your research, right? And understand that, make a commitment. And as we said tonight, we talked about a lot, but I know for a fact that small changes in this space can make a big difference.
Yeah.
A small change can make a big difference. So I want people to think about it, whether it's attraction, recruitment, learning, engagement, supporting, promoting. Just think about the small changes you can do to make a big difference in this space, because we all need each other to really do this for the greater good.
100%. And I know another, just because I know when we spoke last, you also, I mean, kind of tying this all together, if you will, that piece you know, and I think whether you're a new member or an established Rotarian, you know, that we kind of create the space or the culture where everyone, all members can have that Rotary experience. You know, and you know, because I think that we're at a place where maybe we have members who haven't really had that experience. And,
yeah,
you know, and that can be for many different reasons. But, you know, I think that's something, you know, that we should strive for, because, again, I think it's crucial, and for our long-term success, for the success of Rotary, and for, you know, if we want it to go on, right? And so we continue to do all this great work.
Yeah, and I would say, as you know, as we close, I would say, you know, I think that is the platform and opportunity we have here, is that everyone has the opportunity to engage in this work, and most importantly, experience Rotary. And you can experience Rotary. If this is your first time hearing this, we encourage you to get involved with your local club. You know, don't be afraid to join. You can either Google your Rotary Club or whatever city you in and find the club nearest you, because we want your voices. And if you're already in the club, we want to ensure that your voices are heard and seen, and we want you to bring others along. So I want to say thank y'all so much for having me. And if there's anything that I can ever do on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Dr. Todd Jenkins or Dr. Bowtie Todd, feel free to check out my podcast as well. And thank y'all for having an awesome conversation and bow tying it together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Todd. Thank you so much for being here and sharing. And we'll share, well, I'll let Jamie, she'll probably tie it up and put it all. She'll kind of finish tying that bow, so I'll let her take it.
So I just want to also express my gratitude. This has been a wonderful conversation. And just to remind people that this is a lifelong journey, right? So this is the beginning of our work. There's not really an end to it, and we're in a moral imperative right now. So really reflect, I think, on those subtle acts of inclusion, and what does that look like in your club? If folks joined us last week, we talked about microaggressions and subtle acts of exclusion. And so it gives us some things to think about, real behaviors that we can change going forward. Mm-hmm. So with that, I want to remind folks that we are not done with our conversation. We have another episode coming up next Tuesday, May 24th, same time and same place. We will be diving into looking at the LGBTQ community and how we can build inclusive organizations and outreach to members of that community. Our Rotarian, Rob Gelden, will be leading the conversation, and we're excited to have with us Manny Santiago, who is the director for the LGBTQ Commission that reports to Governor Jay Inslee. So please join us next week. Also, don't forget, we have all of our series online that you can find on the PoulsboDEI.org page. We have past episodes, and we'll have this one up real soon as well. With that, say good night, folks, and please continue the work and stay in the fight.